Please welcome to the stage Omeed Malik, President of 1789 Capital, and Donald Trump Jr., Executive Vice President of Development Acquisitions of the Trump Organization and partner at 1789 Capital, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Joumanna Bercetche.
Hi. Good morning again, everybody. So our panel is about investing in America. There's lots to talk about. But first, I want to start with President Trump's visit to the Gulf last week. Your brother, also Eric Trump, he was in the region a couple of weeks ago. You're here today.
Yeah.
It's fair to say that the Trumps like the GCC region. What's the draw?
Listen, I think it's amazing to watch. I think if you said 15, 20 years ago that you'd have this level of investment in the Middle East, I think people would have thought you were crazy. I think if you look at the comparison here to what's perhaps going on in Western Europe, this is the place where there's rational investment. People are working hard. You're not dealing with a regulatory climate that's so oppressive that you wouldn't even think so. I think it's an incredible opportunity. And what I saw last week looked truly spectacular. It's an entire reset for the future of Middle East-U.S. relations, the business opportunities. And I think it was just incredible to see. It's truly spectacular.
Omeed, we're going to talk about the funds, but I know the primary purpose is obviously to invest in American companies, but you also were traveling with the president, and of course there were many business executives who were traveling around with the president as well. What were some of your impressions of the meetings and the energy that came out of last week?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to be in Riyadh and Doha while the president was here last week, and I mean, simply put, it was historic. To see that reception from these countries, but also the kinds of deals that were made. We've never seen anything like it. And I think most importantly, just maybe from a geopolitical standpoint, it was a reset of relations between the region and the United States, which I think so many of us have been waiting for, particularly when you contrast it to the disastrous policies of George W. Bush in the region, or even the incoherence of the Obama administration. So to have someone come here and approach this from a realist foreign policy, which is what the people voted for, which is a more realist foreign policy and a policy of peace, I think was welcome not only here, but also at the United States, because it's what the voters wanted.
Don, the Trump Organization announced several deals as well in the last couple of weeks. Have you found that it's gotten easier to get business done because of perceived access to the White House?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with that. Again, we spoke about it backstage. I spoke, headlined the Dubai Cityscape Conference in 2007. We've had deals in the regions forever. It's something we've looked at, again, prior to most people finding it sort of acceptable to be over here. So I don't think that's changed. I think it's the fact that we've had these relationships for so long that so many of these things have been able to happen. People have talked about that, but the reality is my father was a real estate investor and a builder for 40 years. It's what we've done. And so as the region has developed, as more of these areas have really expanded, especially in the ultra-luxury sector, which is obviously the focus of the Trump Organization, those opportunities have abounded. But we've been talking and doing these things both prior to his presidency and during, for my brother and I, while he had nothing to do with those things.
Yeah, I mean, critics will say that the U.S. government probably shouldn't be doing deals with entities or government-aligned entities that are also doing business potentially with the Trump Organization. What do you think?
Well, we're not, the Trump Organization isn't doing business with any government entities. They're doing it with private investors. I mean, many of the people in this room probably know them or have talked about them with that. And so, there is a very clear distinction between those things. In the first term, we actually said we're not going to do any foreign deals, even though that's what we did. Yeah. We had done it for years. We just said, hey, we're going to do this. And the reality is it didn't stop the media from constantly saying, you're profiteering anyway. It was like we stopped entirely. Even the deals that were totally legit, it didn't stop the insanity. So this time around, we said, hey, we're going to play by the rules, but we're not going to go so far as to stymie our business forever, lock ourselves in a proverbial padded room, because it almost doesn't matter. They're going to hit you no matter what. So we're just going to play the game.
Let me rephrase the question then. Are there any investments or ventures you would not get into because of conflict of interest?
Yeah, I mean, the Trump organization itself wouldn't be doing direct deals with government entities because that's not what they do and it's not what we have. But, that would be it. We're just going to play by those actual rules that are laid out by the government. We're going to play by the rules, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then on the 1789 side, I think it's very clear. We only invest in the United States in private companies, and we take minority positions alongside the largest asset managers and most prestigious asset managers in the world. So it's quite simple. And then just if I may step back on the topic more broadly, I find it odd that this becomes a line of questioning, particularly when I look at the previous U.S. presidents we've had, both on the Democratic side, whether it's Bill Clinton or President Obama, who were basically broke when they came into office, have now become magically very rich. So I don't really like presidents that use the presidency as an apprenticeship and become rich later. I think that should be examined more than people who have actually done something with their life prior to coming into politics and then actually take a hit financially. Those are the types of people we should be supporting.
Yeah, I think all of us would agree that nobody in the vicinity or as a close family member should be benefiting from the president's office, position in office. Just on this point also, Omeed, both of you started up the executive branch in DC. And again, there's been a lot of controversy around that due to the high membership fees. It's about $500,000 to get access to it. But then again, there's a perception that this is an opportunity for members to get closer to the axis of power.
Anyone who's a member there could get access anyway, so they don't need to go to a club to do that. So that's just a total misnomer. The other thing is that the actual memberships for regular memberships are a lot lower. That's been reported. And in addition, I think this is kind of the theme I want to point out here. What Don and I have been doing before we were invited to be on panels like this, I think only Newsmax was calling us during the Biden administration. Yeah. Not that anyone watches that here, but in any event, we've been doing this for 5 years. When we see a problem as if being censored or deplatformed, as was happening to conservatives in America throughout the Biden administration, we're capitalists. We create other opportunities. That's about as American as apple pie. The executive branch, that club, is another example of that. Frankly, everything in D.C. kind of stinks. So there were no good options to go and have social interactions with people with our ideological views. And so we wanted to create, again, a solution, which is what we do in every part of the economy through our fund. And we created another option for like-minded people as a refuge away from, respectfully, reporters and Democrats.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, perhaps we should talk more broadly even about the greater conflicts thing. I know for me, I get the Don Jr. is the next Hunter Biden. And I say it's such a false equivalence, right? I've been doing this for a long time. We were businessmen both before. We will be businessmen after my father's presidency. It's what we've done. I didn't become a businessman when my father took office. The difference being we have invested in companies for decades. I saw a problem that was out there. When no one would talk to us, when we were written off the face of the earth in 2020, I still saw the attacks. I started a publishing company, not because I think publishing is the most lucrative industry in the world, but because we had to make sure these voices are heard. I was the second verified user on Rumble. I helped them set up the pipe that enabled them to go public because the other social media platforms were canceling us. When Twitter threw my father off, we started Truth Social. So we created actual businesses as a solution to the problems that were being thrown at us. We got into cryptocurrency. That's another one I read about, a lot of conflict these days. We got into cryptocurrency because we were debanked. And so it's interesting. I mean, there's many people in this room that in the past I could have called at any time in my life, hey, I need a loan to build a building, because that's what we did. And I would have gotten a call back and a loan in about 5 minutes. All of a sudden, those people wouldn't take your calls. They wouldn't have your bank accounts. And so we did and invested in businesses as solutions. Yeah. The corollary to that is Hunter Biden, who magically became a businessman when his father took office. He was paid by shady foreign companies to peddle influence and influence American policy. And that's not what we're doing.
So let me just ask you a question before we move to 1789. But I do want to ask you, since you bring this up, free speech, do you still feel that you're censored? Because you're pretty outspoken. You say whatever you want.
I think Elon buying X was a major game changer, but we were censored across the board. By the way, I was on Fox News every day of every week for 5 years, and then in early 2020, after the election, I wasn't on for 2.5 years. So it wasn't even just the liberal-dominated media or social media platforms. We were just off. So again, we created our own solutions. We fought back. Elon buying X changed the game because it didn't become a conservative platform. Liberals just weren't comfortable with anyone being able to fight back. They were so used to anyone putting up a credible argument to them just being shadow banned, just being censored. We've seen that with our own eyes. So we created solutions to all of these things. They're not conflicts. They're a reaction to the market and to the, frankly, the landscape that was presented to us because, as I've said, we've always been business people who are coming up with those. We're innovators.
I mean, let me ask you about 1789. I believe you've got about $1 billion assets under management. According to the conversations we've had in the back, I understand that the fund will only invest in industries that are aligned with MAGA philosophy. So what is in the portfolio right now?
Well, by MAGA, we mean Make America Grow Again, and that's kind of our thesis, and it comes within this paradigm that we've defined as entrepreneurship, innovation, and growth, which is our own acronym, which we find is a contrast to ESG. The notion that we observed is twofold. One, that the largest companies in the United States had become effectively monopolistic and were suppressing, in many cases, through a backdoor route, constitutional protections. He's talked a lot about the First Amendment. It's a reason why we've made investments in media. You saw the role that independent podcasts played in the election. The landscape is changing dramatically because people are hungry for that type of information. We invested in Tucker Carlson's new company. We invested in Substack, which is a free speech platform on the digital media side, trying to enhance the First Amendment in the United States through the private sector. And then, of course, we won't stop there. We believe the Second Amendment is also very important. Later this month, Don and I and our team will be taking a digital retailer called Grab a Gun public, where you can buy guns and ammunition online just like you can on Amazon because we have a Second Amendment right. But again, that's an entire area that's been starved of funding in the United States for ideological purposes. And by the way, it's not just about whether we think it's good or bad. I think it's destructive for shareholders. If you look at a study of public benefit corporations, which are companies that behave the way that ESG overlords would love them to behave, since they've gone public, they're down about 80%. So, you can say what you want, but if you're a capitalist, you shouldn't lose money. And by the way, if they want to lose money and do ESG, we're okay with that. Go ahead and do that. But we're going to provide the other half of the country, or probably 75% of the country, an alternative. And that's really the genesis of why we exist. We have now expanded that into, in our opinion, investing in the best disruptive technologies in the United States. And so our basic KPIs is we're looking for TAMs of over $10 billion, companies that are growing over 25%, and we're looking for a liquidity event 2 to 4 years with 200 to 300% returns.
Isn't there an argument that what was the parallel economy is now becoming mainstream because of the change in thinking?
But someone had to actually do that.
Right.
It was very unpopular to do these things. We took another company public during the last 4 years called Public Square. An alternative marketplace to the places that were taking advantage of Americans. So many Americans, and it was sort of interesting, we did these things because half the country was being left by the wayside. Half the country was literally concerned about being debanked. They couldn't get insurance. They couldn't do so many things. And everyone pretended like it wasn't happening because they're in their spheres of New York and LA and Washington, D.C. They didn't realize what was going on with an entire base of probably about 150, 175 million Americans that legitimately had these concerns. They were flagged, by the FBI as being extremist or being terrorist because they bought MAGA apparel or a Bible. This stuff was actually going on in the United States. And so it was an entire segment, half the country, that no one would even cater to. So Omeed and I had been discussing this for years, since 2020, and he said someone has to cater to that. That was a big risk. That wasn't that easy because, again, of all the problems that went around that. But what's nice about us is because we took that risk, because we gave those people that platform that they so desperately needed and felt they weren't getting, I think we probably have the most credibility of anyone in the world to do this because we were the ones that had the guts and were willing to put our names, our money on the line to make sure that these people had a chance.
The 1789 is the year the Bill of Rights was introduced in the United States. So, it's very much part of the ethos.
So let me come back to that credibility point. Moody's just downgraded U.S. sovereign rating on Friday. The dollar is down 7% this year. lots of external investors are questioning whether some of the decisions made by the Trump administration, be it on trade, on putting America first, are actually going to be beneficial for the U.S. economy. Is MAGA working for the U.S. economy?
I think without question. I think if you look at what happened in the last 10 days, trillions of dollars of investment. I think the problem that we have is these days, and with the media bias and hysteria, so many people expect you do something and it's instant gratification. You get whatever you want right away. The reality is that's not how the world works. These things take time to foment, to build up. You have to actually wait a little bit for these policies. You saw it when the S&P dropped in a week, and there's, oh my God, it's the Trump crash. Everyone's lost their entire 401k. What did it take? It took 10 days to get back to where it was, and now it's ahead. It's nonsense. It's hysteria driven by the media. No one who's ever done business, gets that instant return in 1 week, but they expect people to believe it. When the market goes down, it's the Trump crash. When it comes back up, Trump gets no credit for any of it, right? It's someone else. It's these other factors that did it. We've seen this story play out so many times, and I think it's why we're investing in independent media, because I think the mainstream media has frankly shot so much of its credibility by doing this. Everything's about clicks and hysteria, and if it's bad, Trump did it. If it's good, it's everyone else. It doesn't work that way. I think if you give these things time, if you let this investment take hold, this is game-changing for America, for the region, and for security in the world. And if you've been watching the world, I think everyone recognizes that a strong America is not just good for America, it's good for the world. Yeah. We've seen what happens for the last 4 years under weak leadership, and perhaps we needed that weakness for a while. We needed to hit rock bottom to understand just how fragile all of these things are, just how quickly our democracy, our freedom, the peace we've experienced under my father's first term can go away. We went from a time of prosperity to a time of poverty. We went from a time of peace to a time of war. And now, again, it's been, 8, 9 weeks? Yeah. And we're already back at the table when the other administration wouldn't even have these things. So we can't be in a mindset, I see everyone nodding, so I think they agree. We can't be in a mindset that you do something, and the next day the stock market's supposed to go up 12,000 points, and everyone's happy. These things take time, and people have to acknowledge.
Let me say one thing about Bidenomics.
No,
so you said MAGA, but Bidenomics gave us 20% inflation, okay, right? That's what you had there with Bidenomics, is 20% inflation, stagnant wages. That's what we inherited. So when you're talking about imposing a new order as far as the economy goes, we've already talked about resetting the international system, the failure of wars that broke out all over the world under Biden. So that's step one. As far as with the economy, you can't be myopic about it. Tariffs are only one aspect of the overall economic agenda. It's a necessary one and it's a tool, but you have to put that within the context of energy production in the United States that's going to finally be unleashed, closing the border so you don't have an illegal alien invasion, which then depresses wages. You also have to have tax cuts and a deregulatory environment. When you put all of that together, that is the MAGA economy, and that is how we're going to grow in a way that we haven't in decades.
Yeah, so that's the overall thesis. And just to go back to what we were saying, we didn't really hit rock bottom. We had financial volatility, and of course markets have recovered.
Well, I'd say but endless wars, millions of people dying for no reason, incompetence. 100,000 Americans die a year from fentanyl traffic over a border that was clearly opened for a demographic shift purposes. Okay, that's not a conspiracy theory anymore. We saw that 100,000 Americans. Just so we're clear, that's two Vietnams a year in America, and no one was even talking about it. There was a morality crisis. There was clearly, with the inflation and everything else going on, the only people that benefited, frankly, for the last 4 years was big war. And that's a very powerful lobby in Washington, D.C. There's no money in peace. And so I think someone said it the other day, if my father's one legacy is to be the president who created peace in the world, I think that would be his #1 legacy. And it's quite ironic that he's the only guy actually trying to achieve that when the soundbite for the last 9 years has been he's going to be the guy to start World War III.
Let me ask you about one of the other objectives, which is to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. because there's a view out there that many of those jobs have been taken by Chinese workers. But at the same time, a lot of these jobs are low-skilled jobs, and the reason that it's been difficult to employ people in these spaces is because of low-cost needs and also because of the rise of automation. It's not going to be so easy to recreate all of those manufacturing jobs again, will it?
No, it's not. And I think this general thesis that we're going to be making the little plastic figurine that goes in a McDonald's Happy Meal, that's going to be manufactured in America. That's not what we're trying to do. We understand we don't have the workforce. We don't have it wouldn't make sense. But I do think we have to be investing in American semiconductors and making microchips and taking care of our pharmaceutical needs rather than being dependent. 93% of our pharmaceutical needs come from China. Well, we saw during the pandemic that the second they didn't like some of the sound bites, which now all happen to be very true, but we were told by China and the World Health Organization at the time that they were conspiracy theories, that it started in Wuhan, et cetera. They stopped sending over the ships with the protective equipment, the PPE. So we can't be reliant on those who have proven that they're clearly not our allies. They're adversaries at best. And so we have to make sure, and by the way, that's not just going to happen in America, but we can't be dependent on one nation. If this gets spread out to a whole lot of other countries who have these same mutually beneficial deals with the United States, that's good for the world, and we need that. That's good for everyone else to be able to have alternatives to China, because I don't think they're going to be a long-term good actor on the world stage, as evidenced by almost literally everything they do on a daily basis.
A country that does not control its supply chain has no national sovereignty. This is not about some pie-in-the-sky idea or nostalgia. It's a national security issue. And President Trump was the first president to make that at the forefront. You simply cannot have a country that has 4 times your population and employs slave labor to produce everything for you. And by the way, we had no reciprocity in the relationship. So Secretary Mnuchin was starting to talk about in the previous panel, but it goes to every aspect of it. The notion that we have to have a local partner to do business there, yet they have complete unadulterated access to our markets. Even when they list companies on our exchanges, they don't have shares, they have ADRs, which means that our shareholders actually have no legal recourse against them. We can't list any companies over there. I mean, it goes on and on. So again, this is just common sense, and yet people want to say that, oh, we're doing something that's bizarre. No, we're trying to bring back a United States that is strong and prosperous. And again, 1789 is investing in the reindustrialization of the United States in order to help foster that on the private side.
I mean, what do you make of the decision out of the Trump administration in the run-up to the trip to the Gulf last week to loosen those restrictions around chip technology? Because some critics within the U.S., the more hawkish voices within the administration, are saying that this could pose a national security threat because it's unclear whether that chip technology will eventually be passed on to China. What's your assessment? Well,
so exactly what those hawkish voices don't understand the irony of their position. So if you come to this region and you do not do business with these countries that are some of our best allies in the world that are hungry to partner with the United States, you are therefore then pushing them into the hands of China. So it's a totally counterproductive position to have. We know that these are partners that want to go towards the West, the United States. Look, the future is in the Gulf, and you can see that the United States and President Trump recognize that this is a region that we want to double down on as far as a partnership goes, saying, no, we're not going to do business with you because you don't trust you. Well, that's a great way to enhance Huawei and the Chinese. So I think that's why it was such a smart move for us to partner with our allies here, and that's actually going to continue American dominance.
Don, do you think the U.S. fiscal situation is going to derail the willingness of people to invest in the U.S. because of this, there's concerns, serious concerns about the size of the deficit, the size of the debt overhang?
Well, listen, I think the way to handle the deficit, and I think, again, a lot of that was added in the last few years. I mean, it's why you had the inflationary measures. But if you saw the inflation numbers that came out last week, hey, wow, they're back to normal. Because it's amazing what someone who's actually conducted business, being in charge of the world's largest economy, what that can do, right? You see what's happening right now. Again, these things do take time to happen, but I actually don't think that people are concerned about investing in the United States right now, especially under this administration. I do see those concerns the last time around because you had undue regulatory environment. You had individual companies being attacked because they weren't politically aligned. It was basically an extortion racket. You saw that. We dealt with that in New York all the time, even with the Trump organization, where we're getting sued for paying back loans on time with interest, where the alleged victim is testifying on the stand that No, we had a great relationship. We want to do more business with Trump, not less. So we're trying to create an egalitarian environment where everyone has a chance to succeed and create a regulatory framework that makes sense for these companies to come into the United States. And that wasn't apparent for the last few years because no one knew what was there.
So the tax cut bill that's potentially going to be passed could add anything between $2.5 trillion to $5 trillion to U.S. debt over the next decade. Is it worth it?
Listen, it's going to work because of the growth that's coming in there. Again, you've seen in 10 days the amount of investment that's coming into the United States. That's going to trickle down through all of the people. And that's not just for the benefit of the rich, bringing back certain manufacturing and elite manufacturing so that we actually have highly trained people in those businesses. That's going to be incredibly important for the middle class. And that's what my father's done this for, right? I promise you. It was far easier being a real estate developer from New York City. I used to be invited to all the cool person parties. We didn't have these things. He got into this game because he was sick of seeing what happened to the people that he knew, loved, and learned from, because he wasn't your typical New York City billionaire. He was good as a developer because he spent time on the ground with real people, the construction workers. He listens to their opinions. He heard what was happening. He knew it, and he heard it for years. And he got sick of it. He's been talking about it very consistently since the mid-'80s when he was on Oprah talking about it. At that point in time, it was Japan who was taking advantage of us on trade. So he's been doing it for those people, and I think those people are going to see the incredible benefit all of this. What was happening right now was, in the past 4 years, was not working. Yeah. It was a problem.
Final question for you. MAGA ideology is dominating the Republican Party now.
Yeah.
After President Trump steps down, would you consider picking up the reign? Would you run for office?
Here we go. Well, oh boy. Well, it's an honor to be asked and an honor to see that some people are okay with it.
Those are just our friends in the front
that's
row,
probably
by the
just
way.
a couple people we know. Those are the
three
tickets
people
we got.
Yeah, that's it. Right.
You never know. Right now, this has been my focus. I think it's not just about government. It's also about, the business sector doing that. I think when we saw, again, the woke ideology that has taken over corporate America for the last, decade or so, being on the forefront of combating that insanity, I think is fundamentally important. I think those two things have to go hand in hand. So the answer is, I don't know, maybe one day, that calling is there. I'll always be very active in terms of being a vocal proponent of these things. I think my father has truly changed, the Republican Party. I think it's the America First Party now, the MAGA Party, however you want to look at it. But I think more importantly, again, over the last 4 years, I don't mean to keep harping on that, the things we went through, the lawfare, the nonsense, the jailing of our constituents for peaceful protests, it was insane. And what it did was it created an environment where you no longer have these milquetoast Republicans dominating the Republican field. Certain people, and a good handful of them, stepped up. They fought back. They made a name for themselves fighting the insanity. And now they have a following. So for the first time ever, the Republican Party actually has a bench of America First fighters who are willing to do this. Not the, another Mitt Romney, great, he'll come in, he'll be swayed. People who have the conviction to actually fight for what they believe. People who have the resolve to actually do what they tell their constituents when they're in a room with them and it's private. Right now, we've seen too many people, they'll sit there, they'll tell them everything they want to hear in a nice room, and then they go back to D.C., the Washington Post is going to do a hit piece on me. I'm going to change the entire ethos of everything I've told my people and capitulate. That is no longer. I've said it so many times. In 2020, all the Democrats had to do was be quiet. Okay, Trump would have won the election. I think everyone probably believes he actually won at this point. Anyway, I don't think anyone
that's for another discussion.
Actually believes that's another session. But all they had to do was let it go. Trump would have had a cabinet that wasn't always working for him. There were some people that were great and some people that weren't. Now, over the last 4 years, we have a team of tested warriors who believe in him. We know who those people are. They're fighting for him. They're aligned. And these next 4 years can be so much more productive. Had that not happened, again, you would have a sort of very average cabinet. They would have slowed him down. They would have slow-rolled it. You'd probably have a Democrat president right now. I think this is the greatest opportunity. These next 3.5 years is the greatest opportunity to reset America, to reset relations around the world, to create prosperity and growth for everyone. and I'm all here for it. I'm super excited about it.
So I guess the answer to my question is maybe.
Maybe. You never know.
Donald Trump Jr., Omeed Malik, thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.